The applause was too loud. It echoed against the glass walls of the conference room like a slow, mocking heartbeat. My boss leaned across the polished table, his grin sharp enough to cut. "Dumbass," he said, voice thick with amusement. "You should have read the fine print." I stayed seated, hands flat, breath steady. Around us, the shareholders clapped, some with relief, others with hunger. Termination, public, humiliating. He loved this spectacle. The humiliation of a man who had built the very code that made their empire shine. But I didn't move. I watched the laughter ripple across the room, a storm pressing against the windows. My phone buzzed once in my pocket, the signal I'd been waiting for. I tilted my head, almost bored. "General Counsel," I said quietly. "Clause 4B. Read it." The room shifted. The applause faltered. He frowned, flipping the binder open with slow, uncertain fingers. And as his eyes skimmed the words, the color drained from his face. 3 months earlier, the betrayal had begun to rot its way through me. A late-night email, a single line in a financial report that shouldn't have existed. My code, my patents were suddenly listed as company-owned, not mine. I'd spent a decade inside these walls, building, designing. Every line of code, every algorithm, every hidden pathway in the architecture, mine. And now they'd buried it, folded it into legal jargon and smug signatures. I remember the exact moment the suspicion crystallized. My boss leaning over my desk, casual, too casual, a hand on my shoulder. "That contract," he'd said, "just a formality, nothing to worry about." The lie had teeth. I felt them sink in. That night I sat in the dark with a single glass of bourbon, and every contract I'd ever signed spread across the floor. Page by page, clause by clause, looking for the blade he'd hidden. And then I found it, buried in subparagraphs, nested like a snake. A trigger clause tied to termination. They thought they owned me. They thought they owned everything. I moved in silence. Meetings, smiles, the careful dance of a man pretending ignorance. Every morning I nodded at him across the glass atrium. Every evening I left with a USB drive hidden in my jacket. Not stealing, collecting what was already mine. While they plotted, I rewrote the battlefield. I hired an independent IP attorney, quietly, through a shell company. I registered every single fragment of code, every derivative, every algorithmic pattern, not as company property, as mine. Then I rewrote the contracts. Tiny amendments disguised as routine updates. A comma here, a definition there. The language of ownership sharpened until it cut in my direction. I waited. Weeks stretched into months. Their confidence became my camouflage. When the termination notice finally arrived, slipped across the boardroom table like a death warrant, I almost smiled. They believed they were taking everything. They were handing it back. The general counsel's voice cracked. "Clause 4B, he read, each word slower than the last. "Upon termination of employment, all intellectual property created by the undersigned, including patents, algorithms, and proprietary code, shall immediately revert to the originator." Silence. My boss blinked. "What?" The lawyer swallowed hard. It means the company loses rights to the entire tech portfolio." The boardroom shifted from smug amusement to quiet panic. Phones lit up, whispers cut through the sterile air. My boss turned to me, color draining from his face. I raised a hand. Careful. Words matter. I stood slowly. Not triumphant, not angry, just finished. "Effective immediately," I said, sliding a single USB drive across the table. "These systems belong to me. Every patent, every line of code, every future derivative." The drive spun once, catching the light. It looked small, but inside it lived the backbone of their empire. My boss lunged for the papers, frantic. "Stop him! Lock the servers!" I almost pitied him. Almost. "The servers are already locked," I said. My voice was flat. "Passwords changed. Encryption deployed. Your access was revoked the moment you signed the termination order." His breath caught. He looked like a man watching his house burn from the inside. I stepped closer, lowering my voice until only he could hear. "You should have read the fine print." I left the boardroom without looking back. The glass doors hissed shut behind me, sealing their panic inside. Outside, the city hummed, a quiet, indifferent machine. I breathed it in. Cool, sharp. This wasn't victory. It was reclamation. Not revenge. Correction. They thought humiliation would break me. Instead, it freed me. As I walked into the elevator, my phone buzzed again. A single text from my attorney. Transfer complete. I slipped the phone back into my pocket. No smile, no relief. Only clarity. They had fired me, but they had fired themselves first. The doors closed, soft as a whisper, and with it, their empire went dark.